David, let's start with McGill. Announcement
Mm,
today, and I'm not sure this is a very big surprise. Had a sense they would do this, but they will now pursue yet another injunction, this time what they call interlocutory, which
mhm,
I'm sure you can explain,
mhm.
to try to have that encampment removed. So what do you think?
Agreed. Not a big surprise, but some context here. The big news this week was that they did lose the provisional, but it was expected because, and you mentioned it since the story broke earlier this week, that McGill could not prove one of the essential criteria of a provisional injunction, which is an emergency, an actual emergency, because the graduation ceremonies it's already been decided that they could and will be moved to the Bell Center. But what's important to understand about an injunction is that it's a three-stage process. It's the one and same process. Stage one is to try to get the provisional, which is a very rare, exceptional thing. You have to prove a set of criteria, one of them being an emergency. Then you move on to the interlocutory, and then you go to the permanent. Interlocutory is sort of exactly where it is. It's right in between the emergency and the permanent. And what's interesting from the Superior Court decision this week is that one of the criteria is you have to show that you have an appearance of being right in law. And the judge wrote it. She said very clearly that it's an illegal occupation. So I think McGill's strategy here is well-founded in saying, okay, we may not win the provisional, but we have a really great shot at winning the second and third stages. And then the onus falls back to who, Aaron? The city of Montreal, Valérie Plante and Fadi Daguerre. Are they going to do what is necessary if the injunction is given to McGill? Because let's remember, we're going to enter next week, next Tuesday, it's going to be exactly 3 weeks that McGill actually asked the police to intervene. And Valérie Plante and Fadi Daguerre have refused, saying, this is not how we are. We want to find a peaceful solution, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is that if McGill wins, and the chances are, I got to say, either at the interlocutory stage or ultimately at the permanent, McGill will win because it is an illegal occupation of privately owned land. And there's no debate on that. There's no gray area on that. And so what happens then if McGill does have an injunction? The only people that could give force to an injunction like that are the people at the city with the police force. And it's the same thing that happened at UQAM. We're focused on McGill, as well we should. But the occupation at UQAM this week, this was a pearl. This is one for the ages. I mean, the protesters at UQAM stole fencing from a construction company that was doing work nearby. And when asked by a TVA reporter, where did you get that fencing? That's very elaborate, obviously professional grade fencing. It's not like 2x4s or whatever. It's not makeshift stuff. The protester who
Let me
talked
guess.
to TVA
Said we stole it?
said, those fences were stolen from the earth. So
From
we're
the
totally
earth.
justified. Yes,
I
these
see.
were materials stolen from the earth.
Wow.
So, but at the end of the day, it becomes a question of the rule of law. And the question is going to fall back ultimately, where is Valérie Plante and where's Fadi Daguerre on this? Because again, it's like the whole issue with cyclists also. We talked a lot about cyclists respecting rules this week. Well, the fact is that ultimately the fundamental principle of the rule of law is that it must apply equally to everybody. And in this case, at the end of the day, it goes far beyond what you think about the protesters or what's happening in Gaza. It's about right here in Montreal. Do we apply laws equally to everybody or not? And if we don't, then it erodes trust in institutions. And that opens the the floodgates to a lot of right-wing ideology that is not productive for anybody.
So now, my question as you explain all this, David, is let's assume, just for argument's sake, that in fact that injunction is granted, right? Because the arguments will make sense, not urgent, but yes, it's time for them to leave. Can the police at that point, I mean, who makes that call? Does McGill call up police and say, okay, come on down? Or
Well, then what happens is that, so the process would be a McGill representative would go to the protesters and say, look, I have a valid court order here for you to leave. Now, if the protesters decide to get up and leave, fine. But if they don't leave, which would be the probable response, right? Which we would expect the protesters would say, no, we're staying. Well, then it's not McGill, it's not the vice chancellor of McGill that's going to start dismantling the camps himself. He's going to call the police to execute a validly rendered decision by our courts. And so then it becomes the police's job to execute.
Now, I'm guessing at that point, if there's that injunction and police had that injunction, they don't get to make a call here on whether they go in and ask them to leave or not, do
they've been making the call for almost 3 weeks.
Yeah, but they haven't had an injunction. This would be
don't
something
need
legal.
An injunction to implement the law. I don't need if I go and set up camp at your place, Aaron, you don't need to file an injunction to have the police.
No, I understand that, David. But when I brought that up, I've been told, and I heard this from a couple of different people, the situation of McGill is a bit different because it's kind of like half public, half private. It's not the same thing.
Well, that's not what the judge wrote in her opinion. The judge wrote that there's no gray area. This is private land, and you can't occupy it. The fact is that we've seen it in the U.S., we've seen it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Police have intervened. In Calgary, they intervened. There was no gray area at the University of Calgary.
No, understood.
It's a choice. It's a choice that is made by police forces and ultimately the mayor to not intervene because the mayor said clearly, she said it again this week, Aaron, she said, we here in Montreal, what we do is we solve things peacefully.
Right.
But and I agree with that. I'm a peaceful person. But at the end of the day, if people do not respect the rule of law, that's why we have people with guns.
So then the question then becomes, if and when they get this injunction, I mean, this should be a no-brainer. Police will see that injunction. They'll be given it. They then have to go and ask these people to leave.
I hope it's a no-brainer.
Well, how much authority do police
3 weeks
have?
ago, it was a no-brainer.
No, I understand. But I'm saying, so now there will be an injunction. We're taking this to the next level. Yeah. I mean, do police then have the discretion to say, well, okay, we see you have an injunction, but they're still not doing anything wrong, so we're not going to go break this up?
That's a great question to ask Fadi Daguerre because he hasn't moved since that Tuesday, almost 3 weeks ago, when McGill called the police.
Well, you can ask him that question next week, David, when
I
you're
will
sitting
try.
in for me.
I will try.
Yeah, we tried last week and didn't hear back. So
isn't that funny that Fadi Daguerre is nowhere to be found when there are these very difficult questions, but when it's time to talk about, community policing and how great he is, he's always there?
All right, fair enough. Let me move on. I got a couple other things I want to get to before we run out of time.
Yeah.
You wanted to react. I had an interview with Pierre Fitzgibbon just before 4 o'clock this afternoon, and you're suggesting some of his comments that he made. I'm using your words because this is in the script. Are ridiculous? What are you referring to?
Yes, they are. I mean, again, Pierre Fitzgibbon saying that, we have to change our behaviors, right? And and talking about electric cars. And I heard you with James Meny as well. I just need to echo this. This government has been in power for 6 years now. And Pierre Fitzgibbon last year said the same thing. We have to change our behaviors. This from the guy that right before he said in 2023 we have to change the behaviors, he offered himself the largest, most gas-guzzling BMW motorcycle there is on the market. But after that, he's saying we have to change our behaviors. He's investing massively in batteries, in car batteries. And what this sends in terms of message, if you want to really reduce our footprint, look at what's happening right now in Quebec. Last year, we bought collectively over 265,000 gas-powered cars and over 50,000 electric vehicles. We have beat our all-time record for the number of gas-powered cars on Quebec roads right now, over 4.8 million. We are not heading in the right direction. So if we're not changing our behavior, is the question more targeted at the Quebec government that is not doing what must be done to change our behaviors? First thing to change is this government's arrogant attitude towards public transit, reducing year after year doing these battles. The last 3 weeks, what have we been talking about Geneviève Guilbeault and this battle, this ridiculous battle to reduce funding for public transit. When I was environment minister, Aaron, and this is where this is so ridiculous, you're not winning if you replace every gas car with an electric one. You have to reduce the overall number of cars on the roads. And one of the reasons why we're not achieving that is we're refusing to invest massively in mass transit, but also we are not responsibly planning our cities. Look, Valérie Plante and other mayors in Quebec City and elsewhere in Quebec are limiting density around the REM, around metro stations. And so if you don't have more density in our urban areas, what does that do? That provokes urban sprawl. And if you have more urban sprawl, then the more you need cars.
Yeah.
That's the equation. So this minister that is calling for a change of behavior, you should practice what you preach as a government and have a coherent overall policy rather than just telling people what to do and then doing a completely different thing when it comes to government.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this "do as I say, not as I do" approach from him is a little interesting with that motorcycle. I still remember that picture. That's one that's going to haunt him for a long time. David, thank you so much. I appreciate it.